Abraham prayed for the day God would give him a son. Blessed Isaac was his name, the greatest gift he'd ever known. Then came the day, who would have dreamed God would say, you gotta give him back to me. And on this mountain you must prove that it's you and Isaac, or it's me and you. So when I lay my Isaac down with a broken heart, but my Father's proud, and on this altar where he lay, just to find that it wasn't him, God wanted me. Now most of us, I dare to say, oh, we've got an Isaac standing in God's way. But it's on this altar you too can prove that it's not your Isaac that God wants, but he wants you. And when I lay my Isaac down with a broken heart, but my Father's proud, and on this altar where he lay, just to find that it wasn't him, God wanted me. And when I lay my Isaac down with a broken heart, but my Father's proud, and on this altar where he lay, just to find that it wasn't him, God wanted me. And on this altar where he lay, just to find that it wasn't him, but God wanted me.
Welcome to one of the most listened to music news podcasts in the world, SGNP, with your host, Darren Sutherland. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, artists, and entertainers about their faith, family, and careers. This is information you will not find anywhere else on radio, web, or in a magazine, but only firsthand on SGNP.
And welcome once again to Southern Gospel News Podcast. Darren Sutherland, my co-host, Arthur Rice. Arthur,
Yes,
you getting ready to hit the road, huh?
yes. Getting ready to head out a little bit. Few dates. It's been an interesting, interesting trying to book this winter. Normally, normally we only travel about 6-7 weekends, but and of course over the years it kind of has dwindled down. So we usually do a lot of kind of repeat dates through the years. But boy, I tell you what, this pandemic has put a hurt on some of that, and we've had some cancellations and a lot of folks that just couldn't commit to it. Period. to begin with. So we've got a few new dates that we're doing and that we've picked up, and it's Lord willing, we'll have some stuff. But I told some folks there, I put it up on the website the other day, our dates, and before I could get the computer shut down, I had 3 calls and had 3 cancellations. So I said, let me turn this thing off very quickly. But
hey,
we're just trusting the Lord. We know He's going to be faithful, and we're just trusting Him.
We got one of your favorite preachers and friends coming on with us today, Reverend C.T. Townsend. But before we get into that interview, we've got to mention this because this is the first show that we've done since the passing of the ultimate Southern gospel radio voice and gentleman that was a friend of yours. And Mr. Paul Howell, passed away of an unexpected heart attack a week or so ago. I think I don't remember the exact dates, but he passed away. And let me say this, Arthur, from a broadcaster's point of view. I'm a member of a lot of Christian broadcasting groups and clubs that don't just have Southern gospel broadcasters, but have broadcasters from all walks of life, be it news reporters, contemporary Christian, or disc jockeys or whatever. And for the folks in Southern gospel, let me say this. People outside the Southern gospel industry view Paul Howell as the voice of gospel music. And I think he's a Hall of Fame member, Arthur, but I think we don't really understand on January 5th, 2021, when we're recording this, what a giant in the industry we have lost.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be difficult to just sit and speculate the impact that will have on our industry. I was the other day heading Sunday, headed into work, and I always catch Paul Howell on the way in. And his program was on. Yeah. And of course, this was after his passing, and just a few days after, and I just listened to him, and I was just couldn't believe he was gone, And I just thank the Lord for the opportunity that we had with Paul and just his impact, and we'll never know the impact that he's had down here. Maybe one day when we get to heaven, we'll understand what that impact was, and but we're just grateful for it, and we're praying for Sheila and the family and through this time. And
here's the one thing that I loved about Paul, Arthur. We've had some great gospel music disc jockeys, from Warren Roberts to Jay Brazel Mull. But Paul wasn't in a specific city like Warren was in Georgia or Jay Brazel was in East Tennessee. And they made their mark in those areas.
Yeah.
Paul made his mark over 700 stations nationwide and on Armed Forces Radio Network and everywhere across the country, from sea to sky and sea. And probably, truthfully, folks, was on more country stations than he was gospel music stations doing his show.
Yeah, that's what I mean by the impact that he's had, because he's put our music in areas that would normally not accept our music because of the program and how great it was and how wonderfully produced it was, professionally it was. He was able to go into a lot of these country stations that it would have been very hard for you or I to have done.
Yeah. Folks, you can go back a couple of weeks ago. We relisted our Paul Howell interview that we did. It was actually before you started with us, Arthur, and become the co-host. We interviewed Paul. He was one of our, I think, first 10 guests of this show. And he talks about meeting Paul Harvey and all that kind of good stuff. So if you want to check that out, go to our website, www.southerngospelnewspodcast.com. Check that out. You can always go to our Facebook and find out information, Instagram, and all that kind of good stuff. Arthur, let's take a break. Let's come back with your good friend, Reverend C.T. Townsend from Victory Baptist Church in North Augusta, South Carolina, right here on Southern Gospel News Podcast.
Hey, this is Darren, and I'm here for my buddy Mike Lindell and My Pillow. That's right, My Pillow. I got to tell you a little secret, and this is a true story. The other day I'm laying in the bed. I looked at Mary and I said, I'm going to get me some new pillows today. She said, what do you need with new pillows? You got them. I said, I got one that's decent. And I didn't know which one it was. I mean, I knew which one it was, and I pulled the cover off of it, and it was only My Pillow. The rest of them were these ones that we bought from TJ Maxx or Target or Walmart or somewhere that just had worn out their welcome. And you know what, guys? I feel like I needed new pillows. And she said, well, why don't you call My Pillow, because you like the one you got there, and tell them what you're looking for, and they'll help you out. You know what I called, and guess what? They helped me out. They asked me what size I was. They asked me how I slept. Did I sleep on my back or on my side or on my stomach? What felt right? Feathers or, blah, 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 foam. They asked me all these questions. More questions than I ever dreamed about a pillow, and I got my new My Pillow in the mail, and I've slept right. You want that change in your life? It's real simple. 1-800-338-2330, 1-800-338-2330. Use the code word SGNP. That's right, the code word SGNP. And tell them you heard about this special offer. And when you use that code, you'll get a great discount from the folks at My Pillow. I use My Pillow. You should too. 1-800-338-2330. Use the code SGNP. My Pillow, the official pillow and sleep provider of Southern Gospel News Podcast.
And welcome once again to Southern Gospel News Podcast. Darren Sutherland, your host. And as always, my co-host, Arthur Rice. And Arthur, we got one of your good friends today here with us.
Yes, sir.
I've watched his ministry from afar. I've seen him on Facebook. Matter of fact, I watched him last night talking on Facebook Live a little bit. And I mean, he goes to post something on Facebook Live, and all of a sudden there's 500 to 1,000 people watching him every time he speaks. And it's your good friend, Reverend C.T. Townsend. Arthur, tell us a little bit about C.T. before we get started with him.
Well, I tell you, I love this man. I love his ministry. I watch him every week, and I love his church, and he's he's true blue, buddy, and I just love what he stands for, and he's just been a great friend to gospel music too.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's go on over to North Augusta, South Carolina. I'm assuming that's where he is because that's where his church is. I drove by his church before when I was in town not too long ago. And I looked at the church and I told my wife, I said, if I'm ever out here on Sunday, I'm going to go there because I know they got a good choir and I love good choir music. And Reverend C.T. Townsend's with us. C.T., how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for you guys letting me be on your show today. It's an honor and a privilege. Good to spend some time with you guys.
Well, man, I tell you what, we've heard so much about you through the years, and we've watched your ministry from afar, and we've seen how the Lord's blessed, how you did you was a revival preacher and an evangelist, and I'm sure you're still on the circuit somewhat, but man, you did have that great move in Burlington, then you had that great move in Bristol, and a great move all across the country. Tell us a little bit about this young man from West Virginia that if people don't know C.T. Townsend, tell us a little bit about yourself, buddy.
Well, talking about Southern gospel music and gospel music, I grew up my entire life around the pulpit and the piano. My dad was a pastor, and that's just where I grew up at. Lived in a parsonage right beside the church, so my entire life was centered around a church. And I had a great raising, got a great mom and great dad, and they're down here in North Augusta with us now. And I kind of grew up in church, but really the big joke around here now is how I grew up my entire life and said, I'll never be a preacher. And I went my entire life running from it. I wanted to be a business major and just live life and have the American dream, if that's what you want to call it, and went off to Christian college one year and then came back and enrolled in West Virginia State University and was going after a business degree. And, the country writer, I think, wrote the song, said, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And right in the middle of all of that, the Lord so wrecked my life and world and started dealing with me about preaching. And I mean, just made me miserable, changing my plans. And a long story I won't go into, but I'll never forget one night I was driving a hotel van. I worked at a hotel in downtown Charleston, West Virginia, picking people up from the airport, carrying them back to a hotel while I was working through college. And I was praying, Lord, if you want me to be a preacher, I beg you, please make it as clear as possible. I said, if you'll let an angel just come down and tell me, I promise I won't tell nobody. I just don't want to be wrong. I want to know for sure that this is what you want for me. And God didn't send an angel, but right at 9:00, while I was riding up the road praying, I hit the radio on a gospel radio station, and there was an old preacher by the name of Lester Roloff that came on the radio broadcast. You all probably heard him. He died the year I was born in 1982, and there where I was 21, 22 years old or so, he was still preaching on the radio, and he come on there and said, tonight I'm going to be preaching on the subject, God needs a few more preachers. He said, somebody out there is wrestling with the call to preach, and God sent me by to tell you that you need to get busy. We ain't got no time to waste. And to think that he died in 1982, and God waited till the right moment for somebody to press play at the exact moment for me to get it. And from there, life was a whirlwind. God called me to preach, and it was like God hit me with a fork of lightning, and I started getting opportunities to go preach. They had a big meeting up there called the West Virginia Jubilee. The best of the best would come in. And I heard a preacher named Dr. Larry Brown from North Augusta, South Carolina, and I had never heard preaching like that in all my life. And I had a short conversation with him. And next thing I know, we went to Myrtle Beach for vacation, because that's where every West Virginia family goes on vacation, Myrtle Beach. And on the way home, Dad said, let's go hear that preacher. And so we drove over here to North Augusta. I sat in the church service, and the Lord started dealing with my heart about me moving down here. I didn't know anybody. Nobody asked me to come, but they had a small little school for preachers. And I was praying, Lord, give me another sign. Lord, if an angel comes, I promise I won't tell nobody. And about that time, the prettiest little blonde-headed, blue-eyed girl walked down the center aisle, and her name was Becky. And I said, that's it, Jesus. I'm coming. You got me. And so I moved down here and worked for a while, and went into evangelism, was gone for 10 plus years. And then when Dr. Brown got Parkinson's disease really bad, the church, and he stood up one church in front of God and everybody and said, it's time for you to move home and come pastor this church. And it's neat how full circle things have went. And Becky and I are probably happier than we've ever been in our entire lives, living in the will of God and seeing God do great things. So in a nutshell, that's who I am, and that's what I'm doing.
Cool. Arthur, what you got?
I love that story. Well, ain't it funny how God I love the way he moves, because you think you can't explain that away. I mean, and I love that. I love how God moves, and what is always I love about your ministry is how you blend the music with your preaching, and you're kind of like Squire. You can't preach for singing, can't sing for preaching. But I love how you just have built on that. And not only, man, Becky's a great singer, but buddy, I'm telling you can sing, buddy. I mean,
if there's ever an opening with Kingdom Airs, you call me and I'll
Can you sing tenor?
No, I can't. I cannot. But I remember being a kid. I don't know that I was a kid, but teenager. And I remember, during y'all's winter tour, y'all stopped through Charleston and sing, and I remember New Year's Eve singings of the McCameys and the Happy Goodman family, and they do those big things. And even as a kid, I've always loved Southern gospel music. And of course, anytime we come to Dollywood, we stop in and hear you guys sing, especially in the summer when we do the big Arise conference, and we got 3,000 teenagers inside Dollywood, and we bring them all in there to shout y'all on and say amen. And
awesome. That's awesome.
we love Southern gospel music. Our church loves Southern gospel music, and we'll have y'all here in a couple of weeks, and absolutely can't wait for it.
CT, I guess you're 38 years old.
Yeah.
Somewhere around, I did my math while you were talking about roll off air. So that's 38 years old, and God has blessed you in ways that, few preachers that have preached till they're 70 or 80, get blessed. And what I mean by is just giving you success, and you've seen a move of God within revivals in different locations and getting to travel all across the country and do the things you've done. Now you pastor a great church over there in North Augusta, South Carolina. Have you ever wondered why me? Have you ever wondered, Lord, there's thousands of preachers out there swinging hammers, building houses and preaching on the weekend, but you've chose me to do this. Why me? Have you ever wondered that? I mean, you're 38 years old. It's not like you're an older guy like Jerry Vines or Johnny Hunt or Preacher Sexton. I mean, you're a young man. Your best years are years to come, so to speak.
I have thought many times, and I know me, and it's an absolute miracle that God would do anything with me. And I bless the name of the Lord that I have the blessing of living the very thing I dreamed for. And I think it sure wasn't God that got the good end of the deal when he got me. It was me that got the good end of the deal when I got the Lord. And I think, the verse, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. And I live by this principle that God doesn't really need us as bad as we think he does. There's nothing, Arthur could say this, there's nothing special about him. There's nothing special about me. I think everybody that's born, God gives them talents and abilities. And it's our free will to turn those back to God, just as that little boy did that day when there was 5,000 people starving to death out there, and he had a couple pieces of fish and a couple pieces of bread. And I'm trying not to get tore up talking about this, but I was just a country boy from the mountains of West Virginia that couldn't hardly spell. Yeah, I couldn't. You know what I mean? I'm talking about just a country kid from West Virginia. And I told the Lord, when the Lord called me to preach, out loud, I said, Lord, I'll never be the smartest preacher. There's preachers out there that can dissect the Bible in ways I'll never be able to dissect the Bible. There's communicators out there that can speak with great intellect. One of the greatest battles I fight all the time in my mind is CT. Ain't nobody going to want to come here, no red-faced preacher. You get something, makes a big mess like you do all the time. You got to get more dignified. And I fight that battle in my mind all the time. But at the end of the day, I am who God made me to be. Yeah. And all I can be is I walk with God and love my family and keep my nose in that Bible and stay clean and let the Lord use me however he sees fit. And none of that glory goes to me of what God's done with my life, because I promise you, if anything comes good from CT's life, it's because the Lord did it. And I just am thankful for what the Lord has done and what he's doing and what he'll continue to do.
If we look at Burlington, North Carolina, and we try to put man's eyes on it, and we try to put the world's eyes on it, we think that was a crazy schedule. That was a crazy meeting. Was just didn't make no sense in the world's eyes. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. What was you thinking the whole time through that? Was you just saying, man, we're just going to keep going. We're just going to keep going till it stops. What was your train of thought during that whole meeting in that whole period?
I was aware that something was there that was way bigger than me. And Arthur could testify to this, and other preachers that are listening will understand this. We had a New Year's Eve thing the other night, had Karen Peck and all them, church full of people, and they're worshiping. And I can't hardly enjoy it because I'm trying to manage everything. I got all these different things going on, and I can't sit there and get blessed because my mind is on all the moving pieces and all the parts. Burlington wasn't that way. There was no plan. There was there were no flyers. There were no there were no radio advertisements and TV advertisements. we went to town and started preaching, and people started getting right, and people started coming, and people started flowing in that building to the point we couldn't put no more people in there. And then somebody said, hey, let's go get a tent. And I remember arguing with them, thinking Baptist people won't come to church if the thermostat ain't just right. More or less putting them in a tent on the side of the highway in the middle of June when it's 100 degrees outside. I said, boys, ain't nobody going to come. And I'll never forget that we called Brother Ralph, and he sent his tent from Asheville, and we put out 1,500 chairs that first night. And to our amazement, over 2,800 people showed up. And we know that because we put 1,500 chairs up, and they counted that many more people standing up around the tent. And brother, I almost don't tell people about it because people wouldn't believe it. But there were men, Danny Buchanan, those men would get there at 3 or 4 o'clock and start praying underneath the platform. And by the time I'd get up to preach, the Spirit of God being there so thick, there was times I'd open my Bible and wouldn't even get through the first point of preaching. And the preaching wasn't even very good. But people would just start walking the aisle getting saved.
Wow.
And Burlington was the meeting where nobody could get glory for it but God. You know, and there's always skeptics out there. Well, and I can hear it. Well, they manufactured that. I was all emotionalism. Well, the same crew went back the next year with a better tent, a bigger tent, and it didn't happen the next year. If I could do it, how come it didn't happen the second year? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a move of God like I've never seen, and I still get emails. I still get calls. Just the other day, one of our board members, he owns a furniture company in Hickory, North Carolina, and he hired a guy in his furniture company, and he was walking by, and Vaughn, my buddy Vaughn, he's a pastor, and with a new employee, he walked up and just struck up a conversation and wanted to witness to him. And he asked the young man, he said, if you died right now, would you go to heaven? He said, oh, yes, sir. He said, a couple years ago, I went to a tent meeting up in Burlington, North Carolina. He said, and gave my heart to Jesus and got saved. And he didn't have a clue that guy knew me. And it's literally all across the country, people or waves of it, people that were encouraged. And if Burlington didn't do anything, and I'll say this and I'll be quiet, is it gave us hope that God still can in our day. And I think that's got to be our greatest need. As we're talking today, the Georgia election is going on and things look bleak in America. But we must be reminded as the people of God that it doesn't matter who's in the White House. It matters who's in God's house. And we still can have revival, and God still can turn this nation around.
No doubt. No doubt. Arthur, what you got?
I love that. I listened to your story. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes is by Mother Teresa. She said that God didn't call us to be successful; He called us to be faithful. And when we do that, that's when He can move. It's not us. People ask us all the time, how have you been at Dollywood for 35 years? And it's a secular theme park, especially in this age. And you think, well, there's no way that in that arena that they would allow the gospel to be talked about, sung about, scripture be quoted. But it's God put us there.
Yeah.
And we'll be there till He removes us. And we're just using that opportunity to tell as many people as we can about Jesus.
That's great.
That's all we can do,
CT, this COVID thing has changed everybody's life.
Right.
It's changed your life as a pastor. It's changed your family's life on things you can do. And it's changed our friends' lives in gospel music from their travel schedules and their touring, and they're doing dates, and a lot of them having to take second and third jobs even to make a living. I'm sure you've talked to some of them, and you don't have to mention no names or anything else, but what advice would you give these artists right now with everything that's going on in this world? What would you say to them that are struggling, that are looking for a ray of hope, are looking for a word of encouragement?
Well, I think, number one, we all must take confidence and rest in the fact that God will provide for his people. I can't testify for everybody, but I have seen in supernatural and sovereign ways over the last 9-10 months how God has taken care of us. I've talked to others who God's done miraculous things for them. And, for us specifically, when this whole thing about pastoring a church came up, we were trying to decide, is this God's will? Is it not God's will? And looking back at the timing that God transitioned me into a pastor role right before a worldwide pandemic hit that would have completely devastated my evangelistic ministry with all the staff members we had full time, all the moving parts, to an established church. And so that's how God took care of us. Mm-hmm. I pray for and understand the pressure of all these groups that are out there living and are used to traveling and singing, and that's how they fed their families. And it's a difficult season. And about the time all of us say, well, we're going to come out of it, it may not happen, but we've got to keep our trust in the message that we've sung for years. And that is, God will take care of us. And God has, and God will. And that doesn't mean we live in comfort. God never promised us all $1 million in the bank and that we'd never have hardships. That's right. I mean, that's not the gospel we preach. Right. There are Christians that have had to suffer a whole lot more than we're having to suffer through a pandemic. If we're going to be honest, all of us are spoiled rotten to the core. Yeah. God's been so good to us. Yeah. So my advice would just be, hey, stay close to God. For those men that run families, before God called us to be preachers and before God called us to be singers, God called us to provide for our families. And whatever we got to do to provide for our families, that is the will of God. And I think God understands that and people understand that. And on top of that, the ray of light is, it's not going to be like this forever. We don't know what it'll look like after, but I believe the Lord's going to bring us through this. And there is a brighter day ahead. And if things go up, one promise we got in the Bible says, when you see these things, look up, for your redemption draweth nigh. We could be checking out of here real soon, fellas. And if there's one thing, the other day they was talking about all these vaccines and passport cards that you have to travel or have to sell. And I called Ralph Sexton. I said, you've been saying this for 2 decades and nobody believed you. But this is all setting up. Yeah. Just like the Bible said it would. So that's our hope, is Jesus is coming back soon.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Arthur?
Wow. Buddy, we love you. We thank you for your faithfulness.
Oh, man, thank you.
To the Lord, and thank you for your friendship to gospel music. And
man, thank you.
And buddy, just all we can say is just keep on preaching Jesus, man.
That's right. And, you guys got a lot of viewers and a lot of listeners. And I think it's important, even on moments like this, to remind everybody, if there's anybody out there listening to this broadcast, you don't know beyond a shadow of a doubt, 100% sure if you'd go to heaven when you died, today's the day.
Yeah.
What a joy. I know everybody on this call wouldn't mind it if we got an email that says, hey, I listened to that and I bowed my head and closed my eyes, asked Jesus to come into my heart. That's what it's all about. The gospel music and the preaching of the gospel. It is the gospel, the good news that you don't have to go to hell. You can go to heaven.
Yeah.
What a joy it is, Arthur, that God has allowed us. I don't have to serve Jesus, but we get to serve Jesus and have some kind of capacity to live our lives, to tell people the greatest story in the whole world. And that is that Jesus came and died for sinners. And what a blessing it is to see people get saved.
Awesome word. CT, I got to touch base on this just for the folks listening on the podcast. We're doing this over a Zoom call. You won't see the video, folks, of this. But as I'm looking at CT in his office, over his right-hand shoulder in the cabinet behind him is a Clemson football. Okay. Yeah. But yet I know he lived in South Carolina for a while. He's in North Augusta, South Carolina now. He's from West Virginia. Does that make you a Mountaineer fan? Does that make you a Tiger fan? are you close enough to that Georgia border that you found the Lord in the Georgia Bulldogs? Which one are you, CT?
All right, so let's get this straight. I am a West Virginia Mountaineer fan.
Okay.
West Virginia Mountaineer fan. If West Virginia and Clemson were to play each other,
Yeah.
I would root for West Virginia. However, for years we lived in Anderson, South Carolina, which is right below Clemson, and my little boy would go to school and come home with all this orange stuff, and then we went to games, and we just got to liking Clemson. So I enjoy watching Clemson play, and let's just be honest, Clemson's had a few better seasons than West Virginia ever has. So
Yeah.
It's whatever you want to call it. And now I pastor in North Augusta, which is situated between the South Carolina Gamecocks, the Georgia Bulldogs, and the Clemson Tigers. And so it's absolute grounds to completely split your church if you say anything about either of those. So I'm neutral. I'm neutral. I'm all things to all men that I may win some, as the Bible says.
Folks, I tried to lead him down the path of righteousness to Athens for you, okay? Just know that. So anyway, well, buddy, we appreciate your time today. We know you stay incredibly busy, and we feel so fortunate, and I'm glad Arthur was able to reach out to you and get you on here, because so many folks in gospel music love your ministry. They love your message. And quite frankly, as a 51-year-old man, I'm just going to say this. They love the fact that there's a 38-year-old preacher out there preaching Jesus and unapologetically doing it in a way that's reaching not just thousands, but millions of people all across the country. And, we get a chance to talk to a lot of different folks and get a feeling from a lot of different folks. And, I know this phrase is overused, Arthur, in the so-called gospel music world, but you get a sense of discernment after you've interviewed 150 folks over the years, what's real and what ain't. And folks, if you ever get a chance to listen to this preacher, C.T. Townsend, you're going to hear four letters, R-E-A-L, real, because he's been real with us today, Arthur.
Absolutely. And I want to encourage everyone, if you get a chance, to go and listen to the New Year's Eve service, listen to the message. That really encouraged me. CT, that message, you touched on some things that
knocked down, but I didn't get knocked out.
Yes, and you touched on some things in that message that I suffered with this year, this past year, and was afraid to admit it. And boy, I'm telling you, it really encouraged me, and I just want to thank you for that. And I encourage our listeners to go find that service and look it up, listen to it. I guarantee it will encourage you, especially for this coming year.
CT, how can folks find out more about CT Townsend, your church, your ministry, and all that kind of good stuff?
Well, so our, of course, cttownsend.com is our evangelistic ministries, and you can find all of our stuff on YouTube, on the CT Townsend Ministries YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that. The church is Victory Baptist Church in North Augusta, South Carolina. That's victorybc.com. And then go there, look us up on Facebook, CT Townsend, Becky Townsend. We're all over on there. And Instagram, follow us on there. And we post sermons and music clips and singing stuff. And, some of the Southern Gospel listeners out there can kind of connect the dots. Becky and I are down here in North Augusta. Becky's sister, Katie, and Brent Carr, they're evangelists. They sing Southern gospel music. When Becky's mama died, and when Becky's mother died, he remarried Brenda Roop of the Roop family, which now they have the sisters. So Christmas and Thanksgiving is a pretty wonderful time when the whole family gets around singing with the Roops and sisters and Miss Brenda and Steve. Steve, Becky's daddy's been a Southern gospel songwriter and wrote lots of songs over the years. And so the family's pretty entrenched in Southern gospel music, and it's a blessing, but we'd love to connect with you all on the internet as well. So hopefully we'll see you somewhere.
Appreciate it, my friend. CT Townsend, folks, on SGNP. Thanks again, CT.
God bless you guys. Thank you.
Appreciate it, bud. Appreciate it.
When he walks among us, all that he does, all of his mercy and all of his love, if the pen of the writer could write every day, even his words could never contain how much I have been blessed. Can I get a witness in the house tonight? For warmth in the winter, flowers in spring, the laughter of summer, oh, the changing of leaves, for food on my table, a good place to sleep, clothes on my back, shoes on my feet. Oh, I have been blessed. Think about this. For arms that will raise and a voice that can talk, hands that can touch, oh, and legs that can walk, ears that can listen, oh, and eyes that can see. Oh, I've got to praise him as long as I breathe, 'cause I have been blessed.
Father and mother nurtured and raised my brothers and sisters, and the memories we made. Our pastor to lead us, this altar to pray, stripes that can heal and a blood that can save. I have been blessed. We live in a country, it's the greatest on earth. Our flag stands for freedom and what it is worth. She stands in a harbor, Miss Liberty calls. All have gained some, oh, but some gave it all for me to be blessed.
Hey guys, this is Mike Rigglesworth from the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. We want to let you know that the Caffeinated Christian is about providing thoughtful and charitable conversations around pressing cultural issues and personal stories, all explored through the lens of a Christian worldview. The topics we talk about range from human sexuality to racial injustice. We even get into topics such as aliens. The guys over here at the Caffeinated Christian regularly bring in guests that encourage listeners to think hard, which will challenge or perhaps even change their worldview. Like and subscribe to the Caffeinated Christian Podcasts wherever you download your podcast today.
Great word from CT Townsend, Arthur. What you think?
Good stuff. Good stuff. I love him. I really do.
You know what I like? Here's what I love. And here's what I love about God's men. And here's what I love about preachers, okay? I love how the good Lord in his mystery and in his image, we can talk to Steve Brown last week. And Steve's got this voice that sounds like he could ring heaven's bells just talking, okay? In his voice and in his vernacular and his vocabulary is just this. Then we've got this guy this week that said it himself, don't understand at 38 years old why God uses this red-faced preacher boy from the mountains of Charleston, North Carolina, and he's used him in such a major way at such a young age. He ain't even been preaching 20 years, I don't think.
Yeah.
If numbers serve me right, and I'm just basing that on all of our conversation, he mentioned it in the conversation, said he was a young guy in college, 19, 20, 21 years old, driving a van for a hotel there in Charleston, West Virginia. Yeah. That was 1990, I think he said it was. Heck, we're in 2021. I don't know. It could be right at 20 years. But you know what? That's a legacy in 20 years in what he's been able to accomplish.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And that just, that's a perfect example of how God can use anybody. And he chooses to use people that the world. I'm a perfect example of that. People say, well, people ask me all the time, well, what do you do? How did you get? I'm just hoping that people don't find out that I really don't know anything I'm doing.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't have a clue. I really don't have a clue what I'm doing. I just, I've just trusted the Lord all these years and tried to stay where He wanted me to stay and tried to get out of His way. And really, I really have I didn't do anything. I just tried to uplift the name of the Lord and just trust Him, and that's it, And so I'm just grateful that God chooses to use us in spite of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's neat, and here's what I get a lot of. I don't want to say a lot. I get a few calls every now and then from different folks saying, "Hey, we want to start a podcast. We want to start a radio show. What should we do? How should we go about it?"
Yeah.
I say real simple. Be as professional as you can and do it. Well, they say, how do you get such and such to come on the show? It's real easy. We ask them. I mean, and they say, we've had some say no. Willie Nelson told me no. Okay. I didn't talk to Willie. I talked to his people. Steve Brown said yes. Mark Trammell said yes. Other people have said no. Just ask them, because we're promoting the greatest music on earth. Yeah. And it's so profound, the way it touches lives. And that's what I love about doing this with you, my buddy. I really do.
Fun time. We have a good year, though. We got a good year coming up, and trusting the Lord. As CT said, we're just going to trust Him. If we can trust God with our tomorrow, then we can live today.
Yep. The one thing I've learned about this show, though, you know what that is?
What's that?
Never announce what your guest next week's going to be, because chances are they'll cancel on you if you do that. That's the honest truth. Man, I appreciate you. And you know what? I forgot to ask you this last week, and we usually always say this, and we didn't say it on our show last week. But Arthur, what's wrong with living right anyway?
Hey, not a thing.
Not a thing. You're listening to Southern Gospel News Podcast.
SGNP is excited you chose to listen today. If you'd kindly leave a remark and rating in the podcast remarks section, we surely would appreciate it. Please share with a friend or family member. Look for us on Facebook, Twitter, and our new website, southerngospelnewspodcast.com.